There. Let's stay with the story and speak to women's rights activist advocate Brenda, Madumise and Tekano Fellowship CEO Lebo Ramafoko, who we also understand will be joining us for this conversation, as well as community activist Dereleen James. Thank you so much to you all for your time. I'll begin with you, Dereleen. This incident has shocked the world. We've watched statistics going up each and every single year as far as rape and the violation of women is concerned. But what does this incident tell us about the state of our nation?
I'm not even sure what to say about what has happened over the weekend. I think I'm at a loss for words because every time something like this happens, we hear that government is putting together a task team to address this. Government has known about this all along. It's not only in Krugersdorp. Our communities are under siege, and we just seem to be left to our own demise. I mean, I feel that South Africans across the board are being held hostage by criminals in this country. And it is not only the responsibility of SABC to respond, it is all government department, it is civil society, it takes all of us. But I fail to understand, when I look at this and when we meet with the heads of department, we are told about lack of resources. When COVID was at play and our country was faced with a pandemic, the coffers were opened up, across the board. Our communities are being held under siege by criminals, and it's not only in Krugersdorp, it's in the likes of Eldorado Park, the likes of in Yobeni, where we had that incident. And every day we have to wake up to horrific stories of where 8 women are being raped. It's not to say that no one knew, the crime that was happening in this area.
Advocate Madumise, listening to what Dereleen has to say, I mean, Police Minister Bheki Cele, for example, this morning saying that this is a national shame, and we've seen him go even as far as the families of the victims. Yet, in the past few days, and even on a day like today, we're seeing the Ministry of Women launching Women's Month in Durban, and not much even, going to Krugersdorp or even the families of these victims. Does this speak of a ministry that is removed from what is happening on the ground?
I think we expect too much from these ministries and departments, and what they show us is where their priorities lie. So for me, you have shown me, I move on and I do what I'm supposed to do as a South African and ensure that we continue to agitate and advocate for changes in South Africa. So even the presence of Minister Cele cannot be celebrated, right? Because if Minister Cele is true to himself and saying that this is a monumental crisis or a shame, why did he think it was appropriate for him to appeal a decision of a woman who was gang raped in the Eastern Cape? They appealed that case. They took that woman to the Supreme Court of Appeal because the court had found that the investigation led by the police was below par. It was substandard. And you decide the South African Police Service to appeal that case. So you can't come back and shout and scream horror and disgust and everything else when your behavior yourself is that of being dismissive of the cry and the plight of many women who are violated in this country. You come up and you tell us as the police, and I'm hoping, as I say this, that we are not going to be disappointed as South Africans once the investigation starts, and that the crime scene was properly secured, that every single material that was found on that scene, every statement that is given by the victims themselves, by those who were in attendance at that site, is that those statements are well written and are well understood, so that the police can undertake a proper investigation and we can have a conviction in this case.
Dereleen, Advocate Madumise speaks about how we are expecting too much from departments that have shown us what, basically who they are, if I may, paraphrase it like that. The Ministry of Women released a statement condemning the incident, calling for harsher action, yet today a juxtaposition happens. The minister is in Durban, and there isn't really much of even, as much as even on Twitter, talking about it, addressing this particular issue, as a lot of people were calling for some kind of answers here. I wonder how far removed does this tell us that those who need to be dealing with such incidents are from the communities?
I think for me, based on what I've seen over the past months and over the past years, and I'm going to agree with the former speaker, having the minister and having heads of departments show up in our communities when these incidents happen, it's almost too much too late, I feel. And I almost feel that we need to start mobilizing our communities and activists like ourselves to come together and put our minds together towards, bringing relief to our communities. It is all too often that we see that, we hear about the speedy arrests of these perpetrators, but we never seem to hear about the convictions. We always also, when we engage the NPA, we also find that, the case gets compromised because the people that are dealing with these cases did not sweep and the crime scenes were compromised. So there's just so much to be done. And like I'm saying, releasing statements, condoning the ongoing violence, saying that they're not condoning the violence. It is statement after statement. It is show up after show up in our communities, but we still don't see any change. There's no political will coming from the political parties. It is only when something happens where we all flock to the scene and we all flock to courts. But what are we doing to actually avoid and prevent these incidents from happening? That is the question that we should be asking ourselves. What are we doing in all communities, not only Krugersdorp, to ensure that our women and children in this country are protected and actually feel safe?
Advocate Madumise, when one reads, various publications that have spoken to these young women, it's so hard to read it without actually shedding a tear yourself, because you look at a 19-year-old who's had their virginity taken away from them in such a brutal way. But, a lot of people look at it as statistics. But let's talk about what rape does to a woman.
I don't think this country understands and has fully appreciated what trauma is visited upon a woman who is a victim of rape or sexual violation or sexual assault. We have not shared the story to the fullest so that you have a full appreciation of what that does to another human being a woman. Now, the Department of Social Development is sitting with a bill which is supposed to be law on victim empowerment, because victims of these violent crimes have not received and they do not find any comfort whatsoever, right? It's left to NGOs who are doing this work to attend to most of them. There is no system in place that addresses the trauma visited upon victims of violence and rape victims. So, and I think you're correct when you say it to others it's just a stat. So it's 8 women and we move on. It's 8 women, but we have not paused for a second to understand what this has done to the person and to their emotional well-being, their psychological well-being, their physical well-being. They are scarred for life. And if someone says to them that they must move on without understanding what has happened to them, and we tend to do that and want victims of violence and of rape and sexual assault and sexual violence to move on and get on with life and not deal with the trauma, because we have not spoken about that trauma. And maybe this is the right time for South Africans to understand the trauma that is found once a woman is violated and is raped, understand what they go through, and hopefully once we understand that, we'll stop thinking that these women are just but part of the numbers that we talk about, 1 in 3, 1 in 5, whereas they are human beings who are hurting physically, emotionally, psychologically, and otherwise.
Dereleen, how then do those around these young women, be it their parents, be it their friends, be it anyone who is going to be coming into contact with them, deal with this in a way that also, gives them support, but also listens and understands what Advocate Madumise says, which is this brutal violation of their bodies? Dereleen, I'm not sure if you're still there. All right, let's go to you, Advocate Madumise. I think we have a problem with the, Dereleen's line. Let's then look at the support system that these women are going to need going forward. These are young people. You read that one of them was raped by 10 different men. The other one had to even, lie and say, I've just had a miscarriage, don't do it. You just read of how they are so traumatized by what has happened. How then do those around them begin to respond to this?
So those around them also need attention, psychotherapy, right? Because they will also need to understand on how to address and attend to their children, right? They require, on a daily basis, they need someone to be holding their hands. That's why you have to have professionals throughout this process. So you're going to have social workers, you're going to have psychologists, everyone coming to the party to ensure that you're holding hands, both of the parents, the family, and the victims themselves. It's a journey that they must all walk together, and it's going to be a tough one, because depending on how we all respond to trauma, it's going to be very difficult to heal in this process. So for all of them, they need a team behind them that is professionally trained to be able to ensure that they don't carry the burden alone, that there is someone always available if they need to talk, because that's what they're going to need, someone to talk. They break down, you know how to respond. Once they break down, you have nightmares. It's someone in the family, when you have a nightmare at night, they know what to do. So this is going to be their life for a while, and it might take longer depending on the approach that is taken and the interventions that are going to be put in place to ensure that they heal. And let's be clear that they're not going to heal completely. This is something that is guiding them for life. It stays with them. No matter how much psychotherapy you do, this is going to stay with them.
Dereleen, we lost you there as we were coming to you. I hope you can hear me now. In 2018, there was that National Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Summit that we saw in, in Tshwane. The president even talking about how shocked he was when he saw those scars, when that woman, showed him the scars that she had borne from those attackers and her own ordeal at the time. Fast forward to now. The statistics are shocking. You look at between January and March, over 10,800 people were raped. Surely this is a national crisis. It should not be business as usual.
Can never be business as usual, and we find that during the time, a strategic plan was set up, to address the issues of gender-based violence, and there were excuses given that it was COVID and those programs couldn't be rolled out. But there's a 7-point plan that speaks to government's response in dealing with gender-based violence, but we don't see that plan that is on paper being implemented in our communities where it's needed. So we have these summits, we have these plans drafted, we have policies that supposed to protect the women and children in this country, but we don't see it rolled out. We don't see, like I said earlier on, there's no political will when it comes to keeping the women and children of this country safe. And you know what, this morning I woke up, I still feel anxious, and I'm not sure about the remainder of South Africans and all the other women who have heard about this story. Every time someone speaks about it, like just discussing it right now with you, I feel unsettled, because you sort of wonder, am I next? You genuinely just feel, am I next? And just the thought of so many men violating you, it cannot be.
All right, let me thank you both for your time. A very difficult subject that we had to look at this afternoon, but let me thank you to you both for your time. That was women's rights activist, advocate Brenda Madumise, Dereleen James, a community activist.